Alrighty, time to talk about keys and locks. The basic theory of keys. And I'm showing you a quick set because you're gonna learn to love and hate this guy because this is the most popular lock style in the US. Even though you may not run across Kwikset a lot, you're gonna run across Defiant, you're gonna run across all these name brands that use this key. Now, for the very beginning of this series, we are going to be focusing on 3 or 4 different brands of keys while we go through and rekey each set of them, because each style or each brand of keys and locks has different styles out there. For instance, like I said, Kwikset, which is the original name brand that came out with this type of key, Defiant, Gatehouse, LSDA, Master. There's many brands of each one, and they all use a similar style key. So let's go ahead and go over to the workbench. I'm going to show you the pinning kit. We're going to have to get familiar with the pinning kit, and I'm going to show you some of the styles of locks that you will be taking apart before we actually start removing them from a door or a prop or a prep and taking them off and rekeying them and putting them back on, because then you're called out to rekey a house. You have to take them off to take them apart to change the pin. On the insides of locks, there are these little pins that is in this kit that we're going to look at in just a minute. Each brand of lock has their own rules, has their own numbering system, has their own spaces and depths. And let's go ahead and take a look at some of these keys so you know what I'm talking about. Now, in an odd way, locks are area dependent. With the Weiser key, some people may not see that brand in their area a lot. You may see more Kwikset or Schlage or even Arrow. For instance, Arrow is not used a whole lot here except in the commercial world, but in some other areas it is used just as heavily as, say, Weiser would be. So I'm including this, but I don't really have a whole lot of locks to take apart. But after we start taking apart some of these locks, you can transfer the skills over to other brands. Really, the trick in doing that is figuring out the slight differences that you're going to run across. As far as a key goes, most residential locks in the US market have 5 cuts, and each one has their own depth. If you look at this key really closely, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Each one of these depths is different, and that corresponds to the pins that are in this pinning kit. Look at the lid. It tells you all these different name brands, and we're going to be focusing on Schlage, Kwikset, Weiser, and then over here I think is Arrow. But in this instance, for the Kwikset, we're going to zoom in on Kwikset, and we're going to look at all these numbers. Now, first thing you'll notice is in this pinning kit, you have the depth of the cut. We'll focus in on that later, and that is the depth. We take a blank key and hold it up just like that. The depth of the cut is how far down it is from the top of the key blank. This is a blank, this is a cut key. The depth of the cut is how far deep it is. With Kwikset, you have really 6. There's no, you see a 7 here. That's really, you don't really worry about that right now. There are some pre-cut keys that you run across that has a 7 depth, and you see there's no numbering here. 7 is really for old Kwikset mastering systems. It is not used nearly as much anymore, but what you really want to focus in on when you look up at these charts is the code number, or the number of the depth. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Again, ignoring this last one. We're going to look at the bottom pin. And then when we start master keying, which is a whole little thing on itself, we're going to start looking at these. But for right now, we want to focus on mainly these 2 columns. So the code number is 1, and the bottom pin is 171. And if you notice, each one of these is colored a different way. So the number 4 cut is a 240 pin, and you see it's green. we look and we can see the pinion kit goes up top up here. Goes from 156, 159, 162. That is the 3,000ths part of this. So if you add 150, or if you subtract 159 from 156, you have 0.003. Now, again, we look at the number up here. We see 171 is gold. I know it's kind of hard to see right there, but it's gold. And then 192, 216 gold, 240. So if we scan, we have a 171 here, and we can see the pins are gold. Now, this is just for lab, by the way. 192, we can see that's silver. Also, some kits call for 195, and it would be green. This is a pretty old kit. I don't know if the new kits call for 195 or not. All the way down, we have the 3-cut, which is a 222 or 225 or 219. We'll discuss that. And 240, 264, which is 5, and then the last is 285. As you can see here, it's green, 285 is green. So when you have a key in your hand and you're rekeying it to a lock, right, if all you have is a micrometer, you can measure the depth of the cut, all right, and that's 213. Okay, so if you look up at your pinion kit, you have 213 is a number 6 cut, so you're going to want to use a 285. So that's how the whole pinion kit thing works, and how the chart up there works on that. But again, there are a lot of differences. There's a lot of leeway. You're going to run across instances where the 240 may not fit for some reason for that. It may be for some reason a deeper pin, which is one reason to have the 003 kit. As we progress through, we will see we have Schlage. Schlage is a little bit different than Kwikset. Still has the 5 pins, but it definitely goes past 7. Gaze up here to Schlage, and we see it goes 0 through 9, where Kwikset only did 1 through 6. So 0 through 9 has many more depths in it, and we can see actually these are all green. So as you're going through your kit looking for those numbers, you know that you're looking for green numbers. If you take the numbers that are on this Schlage key right here, we got 37747, so we would cross-reference it. 3, 210. Once again, if you had no numbers on there, you could take your micrometer and go to 289, 290. 290 is the number 3. We're going to use the 110 pin. So here we'd use, 210. 210. 7 is 270. 7 again is 270. 4 is going to be 225 right there. And 7 again. So here we would use 3 270 pins, which is right here. Now the pins do have, I forgot to point this out, the pins do have a top and a bottom. See this conical end? This conical end is what intersects, right? You want that flat to the top of the plug. Once we start rekeying it, you'll see what I'm talking about. But when the key's in the lock, this pin is being pushed down by another pin and a spring from above, and it drops right down into that. When you slip the key in, it ramp, and then falls into that slot. When you have all of them alike, they form what's called a shear line because they're all level with the plug, and it allows you to turn the key. So if we look closely back at the keys, because that's really what we're focusing on right now, these are the ones that you really need to get to looking at. You can sometimes identify keys by the shape of the head. But a lot of Kwiksets have these 3 cutouts on them, have this kind of octagon shaped head. Maybe, you know, it may have Defiant on it. It may have 1 hole. It may have LSDA on it. It may have 1 hole. It may even be one of these Baldwin keys. Baldwin just took over Kwikset, but, you know, it says KW1 right there. So really what you're looking at is this groove on both sides of it, and then down the end of the key. We can see Schlage's pretty obvious, even with these do not duplicate keys, compared to a Kwikset key. It's got this sharp swoop is what I call that. And these grooves are what is in the keyhole, right? So that sharp swoop would go on that sharp swoop side. See how it goes in the lock, and it guides the key, keeps it still, keeps it steady in the cylinder. Without those, there's a chance that the key could rock really bad, which happens on cheaper locks. And with Weiser, now Weiser has a thicker keyway than Kwikset. If you look at the end of them, they do have that same groove, but you see here there's no cutout right here on it. You flip them over, they do look pretty similar, you know, that looks pretty similar. But when you hold them end to end with each other, you can see because of this cutout on the sides, or on that side in particular, you can see that it's actually a little bit thinner. What that means is Kwikset key will go in a Kwikset lock. If it wasn't corroded, we'll just say it goes in this Defiant lock, right? But because this blank is thicker, it won't go in to the keyhole, just like it won't go in, say, a Baldwin. Won't work for that. You can't key a Weiser key to a Baldwin lock for the most part. Now, in the Weiser world, however, because it's wider and the grooves are similar, the Weiser key will go into it. And yes, the Kwikset key will go into it just as easily because it's thinner and not thicker. So the Weiser won't work for Kwikset, but Kwikset will certainly work for Weiser. A lot of times in our area, you'll find people that have purchased Kwikset locks and they have all Weiser keys on their house. So, and they buy, you know, a cheap Kwikset lock or a cheap Defiant lock and then want you to key it up. It is perfectly fine to use a Kwikset key and a Weiser lock, either old or new. It's not great, but it's very common. I do it all the time, no big deal. In that case, you would be using Kwikset depths. Even though you have a Weiser lock, you're going to be using Kwikset depths. The depths that you use depends on the key, not the lock. So if we're keying a Kwikset to the Weiser because it does go in, then we're definitely using Kwikset depths, not Weiser depths. And then Arrow has this, Arrow, let's take a look at Arrow. Arrow has kind of its own little thing. It looks very similar to a Kwikset. In fact, you know, you might get a little confused. It does have this extra little ridge right there. And on the back side, it is very, very similar. In fact, if you take an Arrow, which all I have out here is a mortise cylinder. If we take this Arrow mortise cylinder, we can see this Kwikset may or may not go into it. It does, kinda. This is where that, yeah, that may or may not work phase. What happens is the Kwikset and the Arrow spacing is slightly off. So once you start trying to key it up, Weiser or Arrow lock to a Kwikset key, the spacing is going to be off just enough, and the pin, instead of resting on, say, resting there, it's going to be resting on the point, and that's not good. That's not the case with Weiser because the spacing is practically identical, so that's not the case crossing with that. There's very rarely any problems keying Kwikset to Weiser. We're going to go over all of this in our rekeying session. We're going to be going through Kwikset, Schlage Baldwin, Defiant, Weiser, LSDA, and then a couple of Arrows, whatever I can find. But for the most part, that is the theory of keys, how they work. We'll go ahead and take, let's take this guy apart. This is a Baldwin lock, right? I don't know the bitting on it, but we could easily tell this one. Most Baldwin keys, the older Baldwin keys, had the bitting right there, but this is a copy, so we can actually see what this is. 278. The next cut is 230. So if you go up here, Schlage and Baldwin use the same style of keys. So 278, closest thing there would be probably this 275, which is a 4 cut. And then 230 is 270, just like with the Schlage 270. So basically, I'm going to go ahead and show you this. Again, not focusing in on the actual rekeying of this quite yet. We're just taking this apart so you can see what's going on inside of a lock. Go ahead and tap that spring out, something you want to be real careful with. And you insert it into the keyway. We're going to turn it and take it out with a plug follower. What this does is it keeps the top pins up inside, keeps the springs from all shooting out. And we can see there, see how it's level. If we put a different key in, say we're rekeying this to this key, you put this key in, you can see right there that it drops down there, it sticks up there. What that means is it's not going to be allowed to turn in the plug because it's a different key. So basically what we would be doing in this case is dropping out those pins, and then we're going to be grabbing the new pins for it, which was 377, I believe. So 377, and then there was a 7 at the end, and I believe a 4 without looking. Don't worry, we're going to go slower when we go through it. So see now that matches the new key, and we take this old key out, check it, and we see how it sticks up. That means when it's in there, it's not going to be allowed to turn because we pop this guy out right here. And I'll just show you this first pin. All right, see this is what's called a top pin, and if you look up at our Schlage chart up here, right there, the top pin, 237, 200, and 165. That's the ideal way to do it. You don't have to necessarily change top pins every time, but it can be a good idea to do. And then if we tap this upside down, see that spring that just jumped out? What that's doing, that's pushing this pin down into right there. Spring pressure pressing it down, and that's why it's not allowed to turn. And there's five top pins and 5 springs. We'll take it out. That's what happens if you take out a plug follower, or if it falls out, all your top pins and springs fall out. So anyway, that is pretty much the basics of rekeying locks, or the theory of keys, the spacing, the depth, and how to rekey it. Once again, we are about to start in on taking them off of a prep, taking them apart, rekeying them, and putting them back on there. And then we're going to go through each one. For Kwikset, there's going to be 3 or 4 videos. For Schlage, there's going to be 3 or 4 videos, because each one has generations. Going all the way back to the 50s and 40s, Kwikset was around. However, over the years, some of these brands have changed up how they design things. So their locks change, and that causes a problem when you're taking them off doors and when you're rekeying them, because all of a sudden you have this new thing that you're not used to. So I'm going to try to do a comprehensive, basic, but still comprehensive, of different styles and different generations of, say, the Weiser, because we all know from our Weiser playlist that there's generations. There's old, there's old, there's old. There's a lot of different ones, and they just change up stuff all the time. So anyway, that is it on the theory of keys, key blanks. Like I said, we're gonna start in on rekeying those soon. I think if you have any questions, or if you think I'm skipping something or going too fast, I'm gonna go a little bit slower to the actual rekeying. I know that was quick what I just did, but when I actually take them off, when we take them off and rekey them, I'll go a little bit slower, and we'll go over each one kind of in depth as much as possible. And then you can always backtrack on it and see maybe what you missed or whatever. But if I'm forgetting something on this part of it, then feel free to post them in the comment section. I'm not asking for advice on videos to do, because I have my own mental playlist, and every little bit that adds to that is going to kind of extend this playlist, and that's not necessarily what I'm wanting to do. You're going to learn what I'm going to teach you. If you do have questions, I'll try to answer them, or some of our Lockforce folks will always be glad to answer them in the comment section as well. So don't be afraid to ask questions. I'm not saying don't ask questions. I'm just not wanting a whole bunch of do this, do that, do that. I'm doing what I want to do, and you're just going to listen to it, all right? Catch you next video.